Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our presentation entitled Campus Collaborations Confronting Coursebook Costs. My name is Eileen Crevady, and I'm one of the assistant directors as well as the head of Access and Discovery Services at the College of the Holy Cross, Dinan Library in Worcester, Massachusetts. I've been with the college for about 22 years, and I oversee the areas of circulation, reserves, interlibrary loan, stacks, and all of our part-time evening weekend staff. The systems librarian also reports to me. In addition to this, I am part of the research, teaching, and learning team, providing bibliographic instruction, as well as personal research consultations for students in their research needs.
And I'm Mary Moran. I'm the head of content and metadata management. I've been working for the Holy Cross Libraries for more than 40 years. I spent 25 of them as cataloger, and the past 13 years, I've been overseeing acquisitions, cataloging, and more recently, continuing resources too. I would like to tell you a little bit about the college before we go much further. The College of the Holy Cross was founded in 1843 by the Jesuits and is located in Worcester, Massachusetts. Holy Cross is ranked among the nation's leading four-year liberal arts colleges, and we are one of only 28 Jesuit colleges and universities in the country. Holy Cross Libraries includes Dinan Library, which is our main one, as well as the O'Callaghan Science Library, the Fenwick Music Library, and the Worcester Art Museum Library, which is located in downtown Worcester. We belong to the Oberlin Group, which is a consortium of leading liberal arts colleges, and our collections include over 650,000 print books and journals, as well as countless e-resources. We serve a student population of just over 3,000 and have a 10-to-1 student to faculty ratio.
Today, we're going to be presenting about how our two library departments, those of Access and Discovery Services and Content and Metadata Management at the small liberal arts college, we collaborated with the Office of Multicultural Education to streamline circulation and improve management of their specialized course or textbook collection to confront the rising costs and meet the needs of all of our students. Just to give you a little background, the library historically did not purchase textbooks, the traditional textbooks that you're thinking of. One of the reasons is because they're so frequently revised. They're expensive to replace or to upgrade. However, we would place faculty-owned copies on reserves, on print reserves for the semester in which they were teaching. Additionally, we had a wonderful collaboration with our bookstore, and we would get the list of required texts that the faculty members were asking the bookstore to make access to ahead of each semester, and go into our stacks and pull all of those books and automatically put them on reserves, so that we don't get that real clever student who would come in at the beginning of the semester and take out the book for the entire semester. In addition, if a faculty member requested that the library purchase a required book, we would send that through the normal acquisitions processes. We would have the library liaison involved in it, and it would be evaluated as to if it fits well in our collection. Then also, at one point in my career here, I heard tell of this lending library. Students would come to the desk and they're like, do you know where the lending library is? I want to make a request from the lending library. And I'm like, well, you know, we are a library and we do lend our stuff, but it wasn't exactly what they were thinking of. I'll get to that in a second. The next thing that we're all quite familiar with is the problem of textbook affordability. It is a national issue. And I have left some citations at the end of the presentation from 2009, 14, and 16 about this issue, and also with using reserves as well. Here at Holy Cross in 2016, a class dean, through the Dean's Advisory Group, pulled together a group of interested parties to address textbook affordability. Now, when I think about it 6 years later, not much has changed, but we were lucky to be included in this group along with the financial aid office, the bookstore, who we already had a relationship with, the Office of Multicultural Education, and the Dean of Students. And as the issue of text or coursebook affordability grew, the lending library collection grew. The Office of Multicultural Education came to the library looking for suggestions initially about shelving. It did turn into a bigger discussion about the management of the collection. Office of Multicultural Education is located in the Hogan Campus Center, and they held business hours. So it made it difficult for students to pick up or drop off. They really didn't have a system for tracking items, and they were running out of space. They also had staff turnover, and so we'd be retraining, or they would be retraining people frequently about how this process works. So after our discussions, it was determined that the library is better able to manage, of course, access to the collection. We have a central location for students to check out books or return books. We have much longer hours than the Hogan Campus Center. We are experts at tracking items, checking in, checking out. And at the time, we did have some physical space, or more than OME did, more physical space for these items. And in that we had our old newspaper room, storage room, that we converted into temporary storage, and this was available in the library.
So we started planning for this lending library move to our library in fall of 2019. And some of the first questions I had were, how many shelves will be needed? Because although we had the newspaper storage room, we were using those shelves for gift books that we didn't think that we wanted to add to the collection, and serials, print serials that we thought we could maybe get rid of, but we weren't sure, some serial indexes and things like that. So that was kind of a worry for me, but we did get an initial spreadsheet from the Office of Multicultural Education, and we were able to count the number of volumes on the list, and we estimated that we wouldn't need more than 65 to 85 shelves, which again weren't open in the newspaper storage room. So we knew that we would have to figure out how are we going to make room for these new things. So we one thing was that maybe there are e-copies available for some of the books that are going to be coming in, and ebooks would be better for the students anyway. They prefer using them for class readings. And then we found that that wasn't going to work because the textbook publishers often don't like to have students use library versions of their books. They'd rather the students bought the books. But we did decide to move ahead with a Springer ebook package so that we had all of the Springer ebooks back to the beginning, up through 2019. So we believe that that has helped save some of the textbooks we'd have to purchase. And then the other thing is, once we knew the shelving that we needed and that we didn't have many ebook copies that we could use, we had to frantically empty the shelves in the storage room. So we ended up moving books that we didn't think that we were going to need into boxes from Better World Books, and eventually shipped them off to Better World Books. I believe that there were about 60 cartons of books that we sent. And then we consolidated the indexes and periodicals that were on the shelves there and hung on to them just to see if anybody came asking for them in the next several months. And no one did. So I'm happy to say that since then we've gotten rid of these things. Then I had once we settled the space problem, I had some access considerations. I wanted to make sure that people could find these items that we had, but I also didn't want the records exposed in the public catalog because these books were only going to be available to certain students, certain specific students. So So I wanted the records to be suppressed, and I wanted to simplify the shelving and retrieval of the items so that any student working at the CERC desk could run downstairs and find the book without having to know the Library of Congress shelving scheme. And I wanted to facilitate simple keyword searching, especially for the non-library staff, the OME staff, who didn't know a subject heading from a personal name. I mean, obviously, well, they did, but not for searching purposes. So wanted that to be simple. And I wanted to enable non-catalogers to create bibliographic, please notice the quotation marks, bibliographic and item records. So I had a template in Sierra, which was our ILS at the time. And the template just required last names of anybody involved with the production or publishing of the book that was found on the title page. All titles, so the main title and spine title and cover title, if they were different. The edition, because as Eileen mentioned, there are often many different editions of the same textbook. The publisher, because that could matter if you're looking at a classic work. And even the name of the collection, the Bishop Healy collection is what we called it at the time, so that if we wanted a list of the books, we could put it together pretty easily. So that was that part of it. The move itself actually took place over winter break, 2019 to 2020. And that was quite a production because the boxes arrived, and I hadn't pictured how many boxes were going to be coming into the library. And the boxes were all the cartons, if you prefer, but they all came from the bookstore, and they previously had held sweatshirts and T-shirts and knickknacks, so they weren't built for heavy library books. So as we're picking up these boxes to move them around, the bottoms would fall out. So books would fall all over the place, and they'd land on my feet. And you can imagine the language, because if you're a librarian, you know a lot about language. So it was painful at times. But what was even more painful to me, though, as a cataloger, was I had asked that the OME office put the books into order in the boxes by title, just, A books together, B books together, and so forth. And they looked literally at the first letter of the title. So you had and "and" books in the A box. You had a lot of "the" books in the T boxes, things like that. So we ended up with this huge mess down in the storage room that had to be rough sorted by first real letter of the title. And then eventually we did a finer sort back up in the office, just so that the books that had the same title would all be together and things like that. The initial delivery included about 1,700 volumes and 1,300 different titles. And that was about that.
And then we also had to iron out our circulation processes and policies. Initially, this collection was established by the Bishop Healy Alumni Association, which is a unique group of alum from the College of the Holy Cross, and they were focusing on Alana students. Their funding was there for emergency needs, say a student needed a winter coat and or a textbook. So the OME always managed that collection because the money came from the Bishop Healy collection. So we wanted to work with what they were doing and try to streamline it a little bit. So we would get an email from the Office of Multicultural Education asking for certain required books that supposedly were in their collection that a student needs for the semester. At first, they were even accepting screenshots of from a phone of the required textbooks. We asked them to standardize that a little bit, so it would be a little bit easier for us. After we received the email, we would go down into the temporary storage area. We would pull all of the available books we would then place a hold in the library system. So the student would get a message, an automated email from the library system saying that the books were ready, they could come and pick them up. We decided that it would be a full semester loan. In the past, we had 28 days, and then you renew. So we switched all of our loan rules to a semester for any regular book in our collection as well. And then we would reply to the OME email, letting them know which ones were ready for pickup so they could notify the student, and also let them know which things may be on physical reserves, which things we have as an ebook, or which things that we had no clue. We didn't know where they were going to get them, and how the student was going to get that book. Here's some pictures of what this temporary storage area looks like. As you can see, we do have a little bit of empty shelving, not too much. And this is our wonderful shelf listing strategy, just sticky notes, the A's, the B's, and so on. As you can see here, multiple copies of standard textbooks. And then we also received quite a few that came in the loose leaf or binder format, so that we would need to account for those. So we have these old book carts that aren't great for moving around, but are great for holding them in this area.
So this is a shot of Folio, which is where we've been creating the records for this lending library collection. Before we had Folio, we were creating the records in the template I mentioned in Sierra. And I loved that template because it had everything that I wanted and it was easy to work with. But along with Folio came some more challenges for us. We had the option of creating a new record, which in my mind would be like a new complete record. If we were cataloging something originally, we might start there. Or we could create a new fast ad record. And I thought, well, that's perfect because we want to create these fast. But then once I started digging in and looking at the fast ad records, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to enter all of the fields that I wanted the books to have. So I wasn't going to be able to accommodate alternate titles. I wasn't going to be able to use the Bishop Healy subject heading that I've been using for so many of the other books. It wasn't quite right. So I ended up going back to the new record and only filling in the fields that we actually needed. It's maybe a little bit more time consuming, but I think more useful to people.
Now we'll share some statistics. First, the circulation statistics. And as Mary mentioned, we just switched from one library system to another library system. So unfortunately, I didn't grab it soon enough to get the statistics of actual checkouts from our old system. But in the spring of 2020, we processed 64 emails from OME. And of those emails, there could have been one student requesting one book or one student requesting 7 or 8 books. And as we all know, what happened in March of 2020 is COVID hit, and a lot of students, almost all of our students were sent home. Some of our international students and other students were able to stay on campus, but most of our students went home. So who knows how they're going to get the books back to us after the semester's over and so on. And we also needed to prepare for the fall semester with the Office of Multicultural Education. How are we going to provide these required books for our students that were going to be studying remotely? Because for the fall of 2020, we were all remote. In the spring of 2021, it was kind of mixed. It was up to the faculty member whether they wanted to have their course remotely or whether they wanted to have it in person. Mostly the ones that were in person were those lab ones. Most of the other courses were still remote, so a lot of students were still studying remotely. So as you can see, we went from 64 to 167 emails to 95. And then in the fall of 2021, we were all in person. It was determined that we weren't going to have any more remote courses, that we were strictly going to be in person. And at that time, we received 152 emails. The following semester, the spring of 2020, it dropped to 134. Sometimes the courses aren't offered each semester. We still think that's a great amount compared to when we started with 64. But this semester, it has really, really grown. I believe that the Office of Multicultural Education has opened it up to all students, not just the Alana students, as it is a need for quite a few students, not just a certain section of students. So far this semester, we've had over 218 emails. They're still coming in, believe it or not. We're midway through the semester and students are still looking for some books. Maybe they didn't get their Amazon delivery or something, but we are still processing them. And over 328 checkouts so far this semester. OME provided with me some statistics of how many students they served in the years before they collaborated with us. In the spring of 2017, 156 students. The fall of 2017, 48 students, and then the spring of 2018, 97 students. So as you can see, that this program has really grown.
Now, as far as the work that people in technical services did, we went from the original 1,300 titles and 1,700 volumes to now we have over 2,500 titles and 3,200 volumes. So the collection, the rate it's growing, we're going to have to find other solutions for the shelving. Initially, it was catalogers who are entering the records for the lending library books in the system. But because they just keep coming in, we've decided to train the acquisitions assistant and the electronic resource and service assistant, and they've easily been able to take on this task. And this past summer, our student workers were trained to add item records or new copies to existing records. So that was also a big help for us.
So even though we consider this a success, we are confronted with quite a few challenges. When I mentioned previously, the growing need, textbooks, course books, however you want to call it, required books for classes, there is a growing need among a wider population than this collection was originally designed for. Our bookstore has switched to it on all remote bookstore models so that everything is shipped to the student. We don't actually have any books in our bookstore. They still work with the faculty and the students in obtaining the books for each semester. But in the past, if OME needed to get a book quick that wasn't in their collection, they could give the student a voucher. The student could walk up to the bookstore and purchase the book and have it right in hand. Now, OME has to order it, have it come in, and then get it to the student. We don't catalog it right away. We wait until it comes back at the end of the semester to do that so the students can get things pretty quickly. As we mentioned before, textbooks, they get revised, they get revised, they get revised. So we do have quite a few outdated editions in their collection. One example I like to use is the Intro to Biology textbook that we have right now. The class is using the 12th edition. There were probably about 4 to 6 copies of the 12th edition in the collection. Those all went out like the first week. Then we have probably about 10 or 11 of the 11th edition, and those also went out fairly quickly. And so some students were left with the 10th edition. And you know, since the 10th edition has been around for a while and the students take these as their own for the entire semester, they write in them, they highlight them, they put sticky notes in them and so on. So not only are they outdated editions that we're left to provide to the students, some of them are in pretty poor condition.
And another challenge that we've had to face, though, are all of the donations that just come to the library. And, sometimes a stack will appear at the circulation desk in the main library, and we don't know what they're for. So we don't know if they're meant for our regular collection, but occasionally someone will say these are for the lending library. So we try to catalog them or process them for the lending library. But then I do worry sometimes that it's just a book taking up space that isn't actually going to be needed for a class. And then we also have the bookstore has a collection bin for the end of the semester, so students can just donate their books. And we do believe at least these are books that were used by students probably in classes, so they seem like more likely candidates for the lending library. But the collection bin is always full. And we get it about twice a year, and it's about the size of half of a refrigerator. It's monstrous, and it's just filled with all sorts of things. And we have to go through that and search and see, do we have this title already? Do we need these or not? Recently, though, this past summer, Eileen and her crew were looking at the bookstore list from previous years, trying to figure out like what title should we be prioritizing so that they're ready for the fall semester. So if we wait and don't do them, it might be too late. We won't even know that we have the books in the backlog in the office. And then we also have to deal with the fact that we're losing space. Not only are we losing space down in the book storage room, but book trucks. We are running out of book truck room for sorting these books and moving them around the office. And we are, my cubicle is just filled with
We should have taken a picture of Mary's
yeah, I
cubicle.
know. Yeah. And we also struggled with the new library system, trying to search books. And the new search algorithm is very specific. So if somebody put a colon in the title in the wrong spot, then the book might not turn up in the search. And then lastly, and it's, I mean, probably obvious, but it's the staff time it takes and the training that's required. Because if somebody's going to be working on this project for even a day, they need to be trained, and it takes as long as it does to train somebody who's going to be doing it for months. So that's also been a problem or a challenge. Let's look on the bright side. It's a challenge.
Yes. So the staff of OME, which is transitioning from under, I think it was under student affairs before, and now they're going to be under diversity, equity, and inclusion. They were concerned. They were concerned about the sustainability of the service as well as the collection. And the head of OME met with Mary and myself, and we discussed the processes that we go through, because it is very labor intensive, not only for the OME staff, which at the time they only had 3 people and 1 person was working on this solely. They did get some help from a second person. And then our staff, I mean, going down at the beginning of each semester and having to pull all these books and put requests on them and look for, do we have it on reserve? Do we have an e-version of it? So it really is, it's in its success, it has grown to be a bigger issue, bigger challenge than we had initially anticipated. So where do we go from here? As I said, despite all of these challenges, we consider this project a success. We are collaborating with another campus department in helping confront the coursebook costs and assisting our students with their need. On campus as well, we've had some administrative changes. We have an interim provost. Our provost just retired this past spring. We have a new president who's in his second year. Should this program, should this service be brought to the Board of Trustees? Do we actually, can we actually maintain this service as it is right now? Faculty members have their own ideas about how things should be. At one time, back in 2016, when the dean of students, the class dean, put out an email saying, consider, the cost of these books, consider the edition, consider using the library, and consider open educational resources. It wasn't until this year that I actually saw someone actually use something from OpenStax. So we're a very traditional campus. We believe this project's been a success, but where do we go from here? So we'd love to hear from you. We open it up to questions, comments, and a general discussion. We thank you for joining us today. If you care to email us, here are our email addresses, and I'm sure the slides will be shared with everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.